Davante is gone after weeks of tension. The Raiders have shipped off their stud wide receiver to New York. Aaron Rodgers gets his favorite target back. What does this all mean for the Raiders? Have the Silver and Black punted on the season for sake of a brighter future? All this and more coming up on Sin City Beat.
From Las Vegas, this is Sin City Beat.
Hello and welcome. Thanks so much for joining us on Sin City Beat. I'm your host, Mike Davis. Happy to have you with us. So Sin City Beat is the show that dissects the Vegas sports world through the eyes of the sports reporters and storytellers leading the charge. Joining the action today, we got Ray Brewer, managing editor of the Las Vegas Sun. We have our very own Jason Feinberg from Fox 5 Las Vegas making his debut, and Chris Chapman, a.k.a. Magnum 702, reporter with Fox Sports Las Vegas and the Las Vegas Sports Network. So big news of the week, everybody. The Raiders have traded Davante Adams to the New York Jets. In return, the Silver and Black get a third-round pick that could wind up being a second. Plus, the Jets now take on the remaining money on that Adams contract. It's a move many fans saw coming after weeks of injury reports, not playing, and tension. And Ray, let me start with you. Did you like this move that the Raiders made here? Do you think it was the right thing to trade away their only superstar on the offensive side of the ball?
Yeah, I absolutely do. You get rid of that contract and you get a third-round draft pick, top 100 pick. The bottom line is the Raiders aren't built to utilize Davante Adams. They don't have a quarterback that could get him the ball. Their offensive skill players are awful. You could look at Zamir White. How many teams would he be the starting running back for? And it's just the Raiders are in a hit the reset button. Let's rebuild. You got Tom Brady coming on as a part owner, and to get rid of that contract is gigantic. And to get one little draft piece, okay, that's cherry on top, Mike.
I mean, it's a big deal for having the Jets take on that money. But the question I have is, do you think we could have got more, Jason? Do you think there could have been more that we could have milked from trading a guy? Because he's going to have a big impact on this Jets offense.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the fact that it's a conditional draft pick from a third round, it could become a second round pick. That's going to be big. I actually was Googling right when this happened. I was Googling what famous third rounders and what famous second rounders have been chosen. Third round is more juicy.
Right.
Second round, they're going to be good. Well, Joe Montana and Terrell Owens, just to start. And there's plenty of them. So we had to get him out. Yeah,
it's an interesting thing. Chris, Magnum 702, you're actually the only guy on this panel who's a Jets fan.
Yes.
So what does this mean for you? Do you think that this synergy that Aaron Rodgers has had with his long-lost pal, you think it's going to be that good of a thing? You think this is going to be changing the dynamic of this Jets team?
Well, they better hope so, right? Because they gave up, as you guys mentioned, a third round, potentially second round. But let's be honest, the Jets aren't making the AFC title game or the Super Bowl, so it'll probably stay a third round pick. But the Jets need a boost. They have Hassan Reddick, who's been sitting in limbo since they traded for him. He's not signed. Who knows if he's going to be signed? But if you watch the Jets on Monday night and Aaron Rodgers threw Mike Williams under the bus, and let's be honest, it was a bad throw by Aaron Rodgers, and Mike Williams obviously didn't make the play, but they need something. They need something to give them a boost. They fired their coach, which I wasn't a fan of. And they're just inept offensively. They've taken away the play calling abilities from Nathaniel Hackett, who, of course, if anyone watched the Broncos, probably a wise decision there. And now they seem to be a rudderless ship. And I think this is the kind of move you make where it's do or die. Woody Johnson has gone all in. He's thrown all his chips on the table. The problem is I don't think he has a pair of aces or a full house. I think he's playing with a pair of twos, hoping that river card is another two. And we'll see if it works out for him. I have my doubts, but the Jets are a goofy team.
What happened the first time that there was the divorce between Rodgers and Davante? Weren't they kind of getting sick of each other, or was that different?
No, I think it was different. I think it was a situation where Rodgers wanted out of Green Bay. I think Adams wanted out of Green Bay. I think they just felt that maybe they had run their course together in Green Bay, and maybe they wanted a change. Adams wanted to play with Derek Carr.
I think it was money. You know, I mean, Green Bay is notorious for not paying superstars for that big contract that they're seeking, and I think he wanted money. What do you think, Ray?
And I think the one thing you guys are missing is Adams grew up in the Bay Area where the Raiders were kings, and he got to play for his childhood favorite team, and there's such great appeal to be part of the silver and black. And if you saw his little farewell tweet, you could say, okay, well, that's just great PR, as marketing people wrote that. But the bottom line is this guy was a Raider fan as a kid. He got to play for the team he wanted. It just didn't work out. Davante Adams wants to win a Super Bowl. He's going to the Hall of Fame, and he's got Aiden O'Connell throwing him the ball. That's not going to fly, and it ran its course.
Yeah, it really makes a lot of sense. So the question now becomes, what does this trade really tell us? What's the mindset of this organization moving forward? Can other stars be on the way out because of what we're seeing with this trade? After the break, we're going to be breaking it down because there's even been talk of other superstars like Max Crosby potentially being on that trading block. So we'll talk about all that stuff coming up after a short break.
You're watching Sin City Beat.
All right, welcome back to Sin City Beat. Well, after trading for Davante Adams, the Jets are clearly going all in. It's Super Bowl or bust for them. For the Raiders, well, that's another story. Rebuilding for the future, tanking for Shador. Chris Chapman, what does this trade tell you about the Raiders and their mindset? And you were just saying some crazy things during the commercial break that I'm going to have to ask you about as well.
Well, I think they should trade everyone.
Even Max Crosby.
Yes, absolutely. Everyone who is a valuable piece that could garner something in return. We saw the Miami Dolphins do something similar like 5 or 6 years ago where they just basically, any player who was worth anything, they traded away. And it would have worked if Tua Tagovailoa didn't have the concussion issues, because that's a really good football team who does not have a quarterback.
I just want to say this. We had Ninelle behind the scenes here. She gasped when you said we should be trading Max Crosby. I mean, is that crazy? Who else agrees with Chris on this?
Who would we put on the billboard?
Exactly.
There's nobody left.
What do you, Ray?
So the modern NFL, you have to score points to win. The Raiders don't have anybody who could score consistently. They've got two really good defensive players, one of whom is hurt.
Yeah.
And you've got Max Crosby, who is arguably one of the top 3 defensive players in the league.
You could say after quarterback, edge rusher is the most important position. How can you get rid of a guy who's a top 3 edge rusher in the NFL?
But will he still be a top 3 edge rusher when they're ready to be a top 3 team in the NFL? I mean, you've got to get a new quarterback. You've got to get new skilled position players. Is Antonio Pierce your guy moving forward? Is he maybe too player friendly? You saw a team on Sunday against Pittsburgh, late hit penalties, interceptions, poor play, no discipline. We know he's a player's coach. We know Max Crosby went and advocated for him. When you hit the reset button or blow this thing up and you decide how to move forward, Crosby or not, at least Crosby fetches you a first-round pick.
I mean, he might get you 2. Listen, a team like the Detroit Lions, where a lot of people are saying after Hutchinson's injury, they could be in the market for a guy like that. Jason, what does this trade tell you? Does this mean that the Raiders are basically saying, listen, this season we're not going to be competitive and we got to start shipping away some talent and look to the future? Is that how you read this?
Yeah, absolutely. And, Davante may not be the only one that's on the move. Like you guys were mentioning, you guys were thinking of that. But from a fantasy perspective.
Yes.
Well, when I heard that Davante was leaving, I'm like, boom, Jacoby Myers, baby. And well, maybe that.
Even Trey Tucker.
Is he hurt or is it a business decision? You know, how many people are going to just kind of check it out, check out.
Yeah.
If you got Trey Tucker on your fantasy team, you're in for a long haul.
That's right. That's right. No.
Well,
I know, wrong show, but just to let you know.
Let's talk this, because, Ray, you were saying Brock Bowers, you feel that's the guy we should be building around even more so than Max Crosby. Tell us how you think they would do that.
So Brock Bowers is top 3 tight end in the league right now, and in a year or two, he will be the consensus best tight end for the next 5 or 6 years.
Right. He's a rookie. He's on his rookie contract. He's cheap.
He's quick. He's got good ball skills. He's tough to guard because You can't put a linebacker on him. Are you going to waste a DB? Is he going to line up near the line? Is he going to line up out wide? He's a legit threat, and you need to draft offensive pieces to accompany him. And I think the Raiders desperately, a blessing that they didn't get a quarterback in the draft because they end up with Bowers. But now you got to find that quarterback of the future, because in the NFL, you guys know, if you don't have a good quarterback, you're not going to win any games. And, you know, the fact that Las Vegas last week on Monday, they're like, yeah, we're looking at the film. I'm like, well, you look at the film in July or August, you had the quarterback controversy in July and August, not after week 5.
Well, I think Ray brings up a really good point. The part of the problem is, I think I was actually explaining to my wife the other day, the Raiders are too good to draft in the top 5 or 7.
Right.
But they're not good enough to where they're going to be competing for a playoff spot. In the NFL, that's the worst thing you could be.
No man's land.
6-11 or 7-8, or I'm sorry, 7-10 team, because you're not getting one of those. You're not going to get Shedeur Sanders or Milroe or Cam Ward, one of these top elite quarterbacks, and you're going to probably hold off to the 2nd or 3rd round, like you did with Aiden O'Connell, and take him and hope he develops. But you're not drafting a lot of superstar quarterbacks.
No, and that makes sense. And I think Tom Telesco understands that, and he's a good GM for thinking, futuristic-wise. Here's my one question, because as an optimist on this panel, look what Jaden Daniels has done for the Commanders. Look what C.J. Stroud has done for the Texans. Getting rid of guys like Max Crosby right now, when we can have elite players still, and then next year, if you are capable of getting one of those top QBs, I mean, could one of those guys turn around the franchise? Look what Jaden Daniels has done.
How do you identify that guy? You could get Bryce Young.
Yeah, that's true.
And then now
there's more of them.
You're stuck even longer. But I do see your point there that you've got the best in the business in Max Crosby, and he's a building block that you could lean on for the future. And good football is control the line of scrimmage. Well, this man helps you control the line of scrimmage. It's just you're stuck at 2 and 4. God bless you. I don't know how they were getting to 7.
I think
5 in that schedule.
To me, there's 2 guys on this roster that are untouchable. That's Brock Bowers and Max Crosby. You can't touch either of those guys. I think, and we just see his motor, the type of player he is on and off the field. He's too big for this team and for this community.
By the way, before you wrap up, the elephant in the room is that we're forgetting is, what are we going to do with the Taco Bell now? That was in Davante Adams' home.
To my house.
You know what?
Yeah.
Let's all get some cheesy gordita crunches during this commercial break. Guys, because Tom Brady is making moves. He's not eating any cheesy gordita crunches either, unless they're made of...
I don't even think he eats sugar.
I don't think so. Yeah. We definitely do, though. TB12 is adding Raiders minority owner to his resume. How will the GOAT's presence be felt? Can he impact the results on the field from the ownership box? The panel gives their thoughts after the break. TB12 is no longer just a broadcaster. Tom Brady is officially approved to purchase a minority stake in the Las Vegas Raiders. I guess Tom Brady is going to be not just broadcasting, but he's also going to be owning this team. So what does it mean for the Raiders, for the Silver and Black, to have an owner in Tom Brady? How much of an impact will he have on their future success? Jason, what do you think this means for this organization?
Well, I mean, I was talking about this earlier. He's a great quarterback. He's getting to be a better broadcaster. We don't know how he's going to be as of course he owns a little bit of stake in a WNBA Aces, but the jury is still out. One thing that I keep thinking about, though, is John Elway. And John Elway was a great quarterback.
Right.
Then he goes and becomes integral part of Broncos management. And they, other than Peyton Manning, which was kind of fluky, he hasn't been able to choose his own position.
2 words, Brock Osweiler.
Right.
Remember that guy? He drafted him.
So just because he's a good quarterback, who knows how he is at personnel?
And I mean, listen, let's just be real. In my opinion, Tom Brady is the GOAT.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan's the GOAT. Michael Jordan was not a great owner executive either for the Hornets and all that kind of stuff. So Chris, Ray, I'm curious what you think. Do you feel that his attitude, his mindset, his mentality, can that make its way onto the field and it really impact and influence the way the Silver and Black are going to play?
I think it can, because I think Tom Brady just is a different type of guy. Like, from his beginnings in the Bay Area, going to Michigan, right? He was the backup quarterback at Michigan to Brian Greasy, I think.
Drew Henson.
Yeah. And he turns out late round pick, 6th round, I think, 7th round. Nobody really expected much, right? And all of a sudden, he gets this opportunity. We know the story. But he's cut from a different cloth than a lot of other people. I think his drive and desire, and certainly Michael Jordan, you mentioned him. He's been a horror show with the Charlotte Hornets. They're one of the worst franchises in professional sports.
And he sold the team too.
But then you mentioned John Elway, and the history just isn't quite there. But I think Brady is different than those guys because he was successful in his 40s playing. Michael Jordan, when he came back and played with the Wizards,
it was different then.
You forget that he was even there because it was so bad.
Yeah.
With Brady, he still went out on top.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Ray, as a managing editor of the Las Vegas Sun, I want to ask you this question. He's broadcasting Fox football on Sundays, the main game with Aaron Andrews, Kevin Burkhardt, former Mets guy, I know you like that. But from a conflict of interest standpoint, I'm fascinated by this. A lot of people were talking, well, can an owner also be broadcasting the games on TV? As a managing editor, what do you think about that from a journalistic standpoint?
Well, I would say he's a minority owner, only 10% of the team. So I don't know what the threshold is. The NFL's already said, hey, listen, you can't go into other teams' complexes to do like pre-game interviews.
Right.
They get there a day in advance. They do all the reporting. So he won't have that kind of access. So he's only going to be calling those games. I don't know if Fox is like, hey, and Tom Brady's with us. Just a disclaimer.
Right.
Tom's the owner of the Raiders, and I don't know if they have a disclaimer like you would have at the bottom of the news story to say that there's a conflict.
So when he calls a Raiders game, what is that going to be like?
Well, see, that's the thing. I don't know if Fox is going to have him do the Raiders game. I would like to think that Fox is aware of that. And if they are, if, God forbid, the Raiders are the game of the week, they would have another crew there to call the game. And in terms of like having Tom Brady in the building, I mean, do the Raiders need more people that know about football? I mean, he could only help, right? I mean, the guy does know about X's and O's and Jimmy's and Joe's.
I know. I think it's a tremendous thing for the Raiders as a whole and for the franchise. I think it's a no-brainer. It's just an interesting question
But
to have that in the mix.
Is it going to be his full-time job? Is he going to have an office in Henderson and drive home every night?
No, but it's like having like a board member, that you can call and go to for decisions. Maybe he really will have a good eye for talent and those types of things.
Well, you have to think too. If the poor guy is on a Raiders game, he's not too happy with his investment if he's watching Aiden O'Connell throw interceptions.
No, it's going to be interesting stuff. All right, so guys, next, we're looking ahead to the Raiders and Rams game this weekend. How will the Silver and Black fare in LA? Don't go anywhere. Okay, welcome back to Sin City Beat. Now, as we look ahead to Week 7, the 2-4 Raiders are set to face off in LA against the Rams at SoFi Stadium. The Rams are 1-4, but might have Cooper Kupp back in the fold. Jason, that's your dude.
Been waiting for him to come back.
You call him 7-Eleven. He's always open.
By the way, I was coining that phrase before. Who was it? Jamar Chase? Somebody else came up. Yeah.
Jamar Chase said that.
Yeah. We play a game.
We have the receipts for that. We know that. You always used to call him that. But let's talk about this game. I mean, 2-4, 1-4 with the Rams. Obviously they just traded away Davante, but what is this game going to look like on Sunday for the Silver and Black?
I think they come out, they play inspired. Remember, Antonio Pierce is from LA. It's going to be a home game at SoFi for the Raiders with that big fan base in Southern California, and I think they're going to feed off that, and they're going to play inspired football. And the one thing we've seen, if you go to the Ravens game when people are counting them out, and now losing Davante, the general public thinks the Raiders are just thrown in the towel. I bet you Pierce has those guys ready to run through a brick wall, and I bet you they're inspired, and they're going to give the Rams, who aren't that good, but a very good offensive team with McVay calling the plays. I think they give them fits. I look for an inspired play.
Well, the odds makers are not thinking the way you're thinking, because I think it opened at 5.5 and it's up to 7 now for the Rams. So I think the odds makers think that it's not going to go that way. But then again, on paper, it shouldn't.
Correct.
You're talking about, other aspects, the intangibles.
Intangibles. I'm an intangible guy.
Yeah.
I like intangibles too. Chris, what do you think?
Well, from the Rams' perspective, you have to think that their season is on the brink here. And this is a game that they're probably looking at saying, you know what, these guys aren't very good. We can beat them. They're 1-4, as you mentioned. A loss and their season's all but gone. I don't know how many 1-5 teams go on to make the playoffs. Fortunately for them, their division, it seems like it's still within reach. But a loss, and San Francisco seems to be getting right, it could be bad news for them. So I think, like Ray said, the Raiders are going to play inspired. I think the Rams are going to play inspired too, because this is a game where I don't know what their schedule is after this, but this is one that they have to think that if they don't win, they're in big trouble.
Last question for you, because you got the Jets green glasses on. I'm not sure if you're the Green Lantern or a Jets fan right now, but let me ask you this. Davante Adams, what do you think his debut is going to look like?
Well, I hope it's good, obviously.
But that poor guy and his hamstring.
Somehow I think it'll magically be okay. I don't know, because the dynamic with Garrett Wilson is there. Garrett Wilson, obviously a very good wide receiver.
Yeah.
Nobody seems to have any rapport, though, with Aaron Rodgers.
I
and
think
that's the issue. Davante Adams has that rapport. The question I have is, do they pick right up where they left off, or is it going to take some time for them to reignite that chemistry? The way Rodgers has played, he probably needs Davante Adams more than Davante Adams needs him, or maybe
I think it's going to be interesting stuff. They're going to get back into that rhythm. I want to thank everybody on the panel. Chris Chapman, Ray Brewer, Jason Feinberg, thanks so much. We'll see you next time here on Sin City Beat.